Here we go on a Friday. Corky, going to be talking about electric guitars. Now, the question often will be, which guitar player are you? My my ear, I forget what you call that, but the guy that does hearing tests first did it back, I think '98 in Atlanta, Georgia, and he said when after he tested my hearing, he said, "Okay, it's either Chainsaw or Ace or Def Leppard. Which is it?" I said, "Well, given the fact that I've never held a chainsaw in my hand," and he said, "Okay, so you're a musician." I hadn't told him that I was a musician, uh, and so he said, "Okay, you want me to tell you where you were standing?" And I said, "Yeah," and he said, "You fronted the band," which is not entirely accurate because I was always, or pretty much, a second guitar player. But I was often leading the songs. And he said, "Now you want me to tell you what did it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said it was the cymbals. Because when I turned around to end the song, the big bash ending, the cymbals cut right through my 5K. And so, but I was a second guitar player. Uh, for many years, I traveled as a guitar player that was not out front. Guitar wasn't driven in gospel music, it was the keyboard that would drive, and now today it's guitar. So I know a lot of things I teach on here are, old timey things, but maybe you'll get something out of it anyway. Uh, so anyway, I'd be like a second guitar player. So when you're a second guitar player, you're going to be looking for uh, chord substitutions or alternative things to do. Uh, like for example, if my lead singer was playing rhythm guitar and he was like in the key of A, and he was down here doing the basics, A, D, and E, strumming out, acoustic, whatever, well, I would automatically be looking to go somewhere else. So I'd go up here, and that little spot right there, I've talked about this before, but that was where my hand would go, would be grabbing that bottom half of that A bar chord, right? And then I would do all kinds of things in between there, right? So I guess the first question on electric guitar is, what are you? Are you the first guitar or are you second? And if you're second, sometimes they call that lead guitar. And if you're a lead guitar player, then you're looking for a lot of other things to do, uh, other than just the John Fogerty chords and the John Fogerty licks, which are often mostly all down there until the solo comes. So we're looking for chord substitutions, uh, chord uh, technique, like in that A, like sometimes I would, there's three strings right there. I would bring that up like that. I've got this ES335, which is an Epiphone. I had to kind of resurrect it a little bit because I hadn't played it in a while, and I don't worry about doing that on these videos because I think if you're watching me, you'll know that a big part of my playing is getting the instrument ready, and so your ear gets developed by these things. But I'd be like that, and then dole stops, you know, and the second spot I might go to if we're in the key of A and you go into the D, I would be like here. I see some of my students are finally getting that. That is a wonderful shape. What it is, Uh, it's like in the D, it's a double stop embellishment, and your scale would go. Like that. So right here, doing comping and chops and stuff, adding some six or ninths when you go to the E. Now I've got it in the middle position here, which is saying that it's using both these pickups. It's important for you to learn the different guitars and why you would use that guitar in that song. For example, this is I think a double coil, although this is a souped up one. When I lift the volume on this up, that switch, it changes to a single coil, which is what Stratocasters are. Push it down, it's a double coil, which is what Les Paul is, and an ES335, so forth. So in my day, the basic parameters were, if you didn't soup up your guitar with all the different pickups, and a lot of people did, like put DiMarzios on there or something else, if you just were playing guitar straight into an amp, there was the Les Paul world or the Holly Body Electric world, the double coil pickups. And then there was a Stratocaster, which was single coil. And a Tele is that too, just unless you happen to have a humbuckler on that Tele to get the best of both worlds, which is, if you want to get one guitar that will give you the Strat sound, especially the bridge pickup, Tele sound, and then also give you, like when I go up here into the woman tone, which is up, it'll give you the mellow, more like the double coil. Okay, so the ideal band for me is to have a guy on a double coil, can be this guitar, and then another guy or gal on the single coil, or in that case a Strat or Tele. Those are the two guitars that really frame the sounds that I prefer in playing in bands. If you're only going to have one guitar player, you need to be thinking about which you're going to use, because they lend themselves to different things. Okay. A little side note here: Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck. Now Clapton, he would kind of stay in one camp or another. So when he comes out on the scene, Yardbirds and Cream, he's playing these Holly Body Electrics like this one. And then at this certain point, maybe the first Clapton solo album, maybe it was Layla by Derek Dominoes. He switches to Strat, and he kind of stays there. But back in the day, early days of Clapton, he's playing double coil pickups. He's playing these SGs, which are fantastic guitar for rock music. And he's playing Les Pauls, and he's playing ES335s, even up through Blind Faith, okay? But then he switches to the Strat and the Tele, which is a different sound. You've heard that. You can get that bank sound on a Strat, and you can get other sounds on it too. I tend to think of a Strat as a sports car, and I think of this guitar, which I named Red Dog. This guitar is more like a Buick, okay? If that gives you any kind of indication about where I'm going with that. Because all of these shredding things that guys like to do, often on, you know, Strats, Tellys, Paul Reed Smith, and all that, and they're doing all this stuff. Often they got a whammy bar there. Well, that, unless you're just talking Chet Atkins, Bigsby tremolo on a Gretsch, this guitar does not lend itself to extreme bends. You can bend on it, but it's not really given to very far bends. So in the 60s, when we see Jeff Beck and we see Jimmy Page, we almost always see them wearing a Les Paul. But when we listen to their albums, we know there's other things going on. And all of that, those dive bombs and all that whammy bar stuff that Jeff Beck was doing probably was done on a Stratocaster in the studio. And why then he more often played a Les Paul in concert, I don't know. But now, toward the end of his career, Jeff Beck starts working out ways of doing bends and ways of using the whammy bar. So he always was a whammy bar guy, but you know, this threw us off in the 60s and the 70s because we saw pictures of Jeff Beck always playing Les Paul. Same thing is true of Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page is always seen playing a Les Paul, but if you study the records, you're going to hear a Telecaster and you're going to hear a Strat, because he's going to use that in the studio, but he's not. He doesn't want the publicity picture to show him playing that. It's a really interesting kind of hitch in the understanding of you know, the growth of rock, blues rock guitar playing. All right, so if those are the two worlds, then what's this guitar? What's it given to? You know, what's it lend itself to? Let's go all the way into the bridge pickup right here. Now, you can hear Chuck Berry in this because he played an ES-335. When you go into the bridge pickup on a hollow body electric like this double coil, it's not the best bridge pickup sound, except for rockabilly. So, you know, I would prefer a Telecaster or a Stratocaster if I'm doing that kind of stuff, right? Now, if I'm doing traditional blues, then I'm more likely going to be in the middle. And then I'm often going to be like in a B.B. King setting. I mean, a setting that lends to B.B. King. And that's a real mellow sound. So this guitar, if I'm playing traditional blues, Chicago blues per se, I would probably use this guitar in like a, or jazz, really, you know. This would be the guitar I'd use for that. So you're going to have to get acquainted with the different guitars if you're going to move around in the guitar world, because they all are like different tools in a toolbox. So where this guitar, to me, it's in that bridge pickup, it's good, but it doesn't have the bite that a Tele or a Strat has. Doesn't have the bite that a Tele or Strat has. But the advantage of this guitar is that neck pickup, or what Hendrix called the woman tone. Like that. So that's some discussion about electric guitars. I do love this guitar. And Epiphone has been brought up because they pushed the Strats and the Teles and Fender out of reach. All right, y'all have a good one. See you.